Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where today I'm going to be beaming your ears all the way to Tallinn in Estonia, which is high on my list of places to visit, and also home of my former favourite goalkeeper, Mait Müntel, because I am a long-suffering Derby County fan. But you didn't tune into this podcast to hear me wax lyrical about football and my travel bucket list. So today, I've invited Lingvist CEO and co-founder Mait Müntel onto the podcast, who is a great guy that I've officially added to my fun guys I need to grab a beer with list. And he has a great story where he began as a particle physicist who then turned co-founder of an AI-based language learning app called Lingvist. And he was also part of the Higgs boson discovery team, where he was frustrated by being unable to speak French fluently. So in typical scientist fashion, he decided to look at the French language as a mathematical problem that could be fun to solve. And soon he used the machine learning capabilities to run his language as math hypothesis and began building out software to test it. And within only a year, he was able to study French for 200 hours and pass a high school French test. So he left to start Lingvist, a company that essentially uses artificial intelligence to create personalised language experiences for over 1.4 million language users. But I've probably revealed far too much already, but it's a great story. He's a great guy. So let me beam your ears all the way to Estonia and we'll meet him for a chat now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be invited to the show. My name is Mait Müntel, and the reason why I was invited was that I'm CEO and co-founder of a company, Lingvist. And I'm not a linguist by myself at all, but I'm a physicist.
I'm so glad to get you on here today, because one of the things I absolutely love is not only just hearing, we'll hear about Lingvist in a moment and the great work that you're doing, but I love hearing the very personal stories behind these tech companies and the startup stories. So I feel I've got to ask you to share your story of how you went from a particle physicist to co-founder of an AI-based language learning app, because I feel there's got to be a story there, hasn't there?
Yes, I can even start a little bit further away why I became a particle physicist. Many of the startup stories actually start from co-founders' personal problem and personal pain, and my pain was learning languages at school. I had to learn Russian at school for 12 years, and I barely can say hello. And then I had to learn English. That was a little bit more successful, but still I hated language learning so much that I became a physicist, because I thought that I never have to learn any languages when I'm a physicist. So I did a little bit astronomy, not to be confused with astrology. Astronomy is study about the stars, and I was calculating the nuclear explosions on very small and distant stars called neutron stars. And then somehow my focus changed so that I ended up working at CERN, the Center of European Nuclear Research. So I made already a big jump from the biggest objects in the world, as stars, to the smallest objects, elementary particles. And we had one amazing discovery. We discovered Higgs boson 2012. But after this discovery, I realized that we are using really interesting mathematical tool set to discover unknown particles. And I was wondering whether I can use this tool set to accelerate my learning French. And somehow this hobby went out of the control. So I started a company, Lingvist.
I love that story, though, how it just seemed to blindside you and came out of nowhere. And within a year, you was able to study French for 200 hours and then pass a high school French test. So you left to start Lingvist, a company that uses artificial intelligence to create personalized language experiences with, and I've got to point this out, over 1.4 million language users. So can you tell me more about exactly what Lingvist is and what makes it different from all those other language learning solutions out there?
And the reason why I started language learning application was that I thought that statistics is really important, because if you, for example, spend 1 minute to learn a word, and if this word is really very, very useful, then you have spent your minute very valuably. But oftentimes it happens that these words which are in language learning books, they're not that frequently used. Like I remember that in the book that I bought about French, in the first chapter, there was a discussion about garbage recycling factory. And I was thinking that, okay, when did I last time use in my native language garbage recycling factory? So is it really valuable spent of time? And I wanted to approach it a little bit more systematically. So I downloaded all of the subtitles that have been ever produced for French language, and there was tens of thousands of them. And as I had tools to analyze them, then I could sort out what are actually the words that I have to learn. And I did some frequency analysis. So without knowing anything about French, actually, I created a language course automatically that was a little bit, had some bugs in it, but in general it worked. And then I thought I can do the same thing with my memory, that while I'm learning, then I can measure how my memory works, because sometimes I give correct answers, sometimes incorrect answers. Based on these answers, I can measure how my memory fades away. And if I know what I have to learn, how my memory works, then I can use machine learning to also decide when and what exactly I have to review to be most efficient. And my initial calculations showed that although my native language is Estonian, that is very, very far branch from other European languages, then I can still learn a new language like French. For English speakers, much, much easier, because they share 1/3 of the same vocabulary almost. But I built this prototype to test actually whether my hypothesis is true. And I actually did this language test not after 1 year, but after 2 months learning with the program. So it was even faster than you imagined.
Wow. So how does it work then? For example, if myself or anybody listening wanted to learn Spanish, how would we get up and running and get the most out of Lingvist?
We do not cover everything with Lingvist. So people have different needs. Some people want to speak, others listen or read. But all of them need vocabulary. And our goal is first to nail vocabulary learning, so that vocabulary learning is this painful and difficult part for everybody. And when people start using Lingvist, then they are thrown right away to very simple exercise where they have to translate the native word to the new language. If they do not know it, then it's shown how it's written and how it's there is also audio. And your task is to just rewrite it or pronounce it. And this moment when you do it is actually the moment when you learn, when you actively recall it. And then, of course, you will forget it, but we will bring it back after a certain amount of time. And this time depends on how good your memory is, how good your knowledge is. And we do it for every single word, every single thing that you learn. And as machine learning algorithms measure how your memory works, and they know when you're going to forget something, then we also surface them in the best moment for you. And the studies have shown that actually people learn vocabulary much, much, much faster than they do it with any other methods. And if they do it, then it opens up the doors for all of the other communication. They can read and listen and speak as well.
And what is it about machine learning? How does machine learning significantly enable you to help accelerate that language learning process that isn't available in other traditional methods?
If you think about a teacher who teaches you a word, in one lesson, he tries to teach you a word, chien, dog in French. You forget it. In the next week, if you go to the lesson, it teaches you the same word again. Well, you forget it. And there are thousands of words for every single language. Every single word you forget at different times. And teacher cannot keep track of how exactly you forget something or what do you exactly know. But the computer has a huge memory, huge processing power. So while you are learning, it can track everything and map your memory very, very precisely, that you know these 274 words and these 582 words are words that are about to be forgotten soon. And as the computer can track every single thing, can measure all of your memory stages precisely, then it can actually make decisions when is the best time to do which exercise, so that every exercise that you do is the most value-adding for you. And if you always do things which are the most valuable, then it actually accelerates your learning massively.
So if we were to compare the difference between learning a language, let's say 10 years ago without machine learning, how big is that gap in how quickly people can learn now, do you think?
We have been operating for 6 years, and 10 years ago, there were already language learning platforms on the internet. I think in the language learning has shifted a lot to internet, but it doesn't necessarily mean that machine learning is involved in the learning process. Machine learning is definitely used for all of the language learning applications for marketing purposes, but not for improving the learning itself. And I think that we are the first company who actually is doing it, that we are using machine learning to accelerate your learning personally. And we got started 6 years ago. Today we have 4 million users. So if you take on average, there are more 10 billion people in the world, then it's not very different compared to the 10 years ago time, that only a small percentage of people are benefiting from machine learning techniques in learning. But I think that in the next 10 years, it will be a massive change. That in next 10 years, you do not think about anymore about language learning as a very long-term project. You think about if you need to go to another school in another country or you take another job in another country, then I think that couple of months is enough to learn a new language so that you are operational in it. You're not perfect, you make mistakes, but I think that in 10 years we have technology so that a couple of months is enough to learn a new language. It's very ambitious, and we're working on that. But you have to set hairy, audacious goals to achieve something.
Absolutely, you really do. And for those skeptics or cynical people listening that are a bit wary of hearing about another service with artificial intelligence and machine learning, can you tell me more about how you actually think artificial intelligence could actually be underhyped rather than overhyped when you look at the potential that and the game-changing moments it can actually deliver here?
In the general terms, artificial intelligence is definitely overhyped in many areas, because any decision that computer makes can be called artificial intelligence. But in fact, it's computers are not really very clever. It's artificial stupidity in many terms. that for example, you can take a lot of data and you can train computer to distinguish between dogs and wolf. The machine learning algorithms, if they have a lot of data, they can really learn to distinguish them very well. But if you look a little bit closer, then you actually realize that if the background is in nature, then it's classified to be a wolf, and if it's in the city environment, it's a dog. So computer just does what you ask it to do, but it doesn't make decisions by itself. And if you give him a stupid task, then he does it in a stupid way. And there are some things where machine learning can really help. For example, machine translation. It has made translating much easier. The voice to speech or text to speech, or vice versa, speech to text. This is something that machine learning is doing really well. And I think in English, it works even better than human people transcribing, for example, some radio podcast texts. But this is where machine learning is used and where it delivers good results, but you can't solve everything with machine learning. And in most cases, if companies talk about that they are doing something with machine learning, then these are not very complicated things that they do, actually.
Yeah. So as for Lingvist then, how much does it cost to sign up and get the most out of it if you did want to learn a new language? And how does that work?
We have quite high price range. Obviously, it's different for low GDP and high GDP countries because many things are different in these countries. For high GDP countries, we have 3 packages: 20 euros per month, 40 euros per 3 months, and 80 euros per a year. And many other companies, they have much lower price. Nevertheless, if you think about the time, how expensive is your time, then it actually makes sense to pay higher price if you can learn the same thing much faster.
Absolutely. And that's something that seems to be getting more and more important. It all seems that the time is the new currency in so many different ways. But how are you planning to continue to improve and expand your technology as you continue forward? And especially as these emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning continue to converge and open up new possibilities. Is there anything you can share about the future there?
Yeah, we can't reveal the plans, what we're doing. Sure. But what we can say that we have hiring data science research team from top universities, and just recently one of the top scientists of the world has joined us, who is very well known in the field where is intersection of artificial intelligence, psycholinguistics, cognitive science, and languages. And it's not a very big field of science, but these people have experience how to work with languages, how to do proper measurements about memory and cognitive processes, and can build models that can be tested. And this is really important because maybe you have heard this quote that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it.
Yeah.
And education in general and language learning in general, there have been a lot of theories how people learn languages. There are 60 theories how people learn languages, maybe more. Many of them are conflicting with each other and hard to test. But really, you can make systematic progress if you can strictly measure that this action that you did, how much learning value it added today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. And as we have this tool set and this expertise that we can measure how much we actually deliver value to the learner, then it gives us excellent tools to improve the learning efficiency as well. And I think that we are building team around this competence, and we will deliver amazing results.
And you seem to be just doing that, and you're a great example of this. I mean, how many languages can you speak right now? You've already mentioned English, French, and Russian. How many can you speak?
Well, I have learned maybe 10 languages. I've tried to learn 10 languages. It doesn't mean that I speak all of them. Yeah. I'm really comfortably operational in Estonian, and as you see, my English is not perfect.
No, it's brilliant. 10 languages. You must be like Johnny Number 5 in that short circuit movie.
My goal is to develop technology so that if I go to Spain, then I can take a couple of months to learn Spanish so that I can use it in my travel. And I think we're making good steps towards this goal. And I believe that language learning is general. We can model it as general learning so that language learning is a great test bed for testing how people learn something. But later we can take this knowledge and outscale it to some other fields of education so that these algorithms that we're using currently for language learning, we can later use it for learning medicine or physics or history or whatever you want. And this will be a very big impact, because if we can accelerate human learning by order of magnitude, then it will make everybody's life much better.
Wow, it's such an inspirational story. And for anyone listening who would like to follow in your footsteps and head towards 10 languages, can you remind them where they can find Lingvist online, and also contact your team if they do have any questions after listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, people can just Google Lingvist and just remember that it's V is in the middle, not U, because it's a Nordic word. So it's linguist in English is basically the same as linguist in with V in Estonian, Finnish, Swedish. So just you have to make one letter V in the middle.
Well, I'll add that link to the show notes just so people can find you nice and easily. And I've loved chatting with you today, especially how machine learning is significantly accelerating language learning and the whole process that goes with it. But more importantly, that how important scientific theories have been a huge part in Lingvist's success, and also changing your story along the way as well. I'd love to know what's going to happen to you next. So I'd love to stay in touch and find out where your journey heads to. But more than anything, just thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
10 languages. Man, I struggle to speak one language properly, never mind 10. But before recording the podcast, I will tell you that I hit it off instantly with Mait. And he was one of the funniest and coolest guys I've been fortunate to speak with on this podcast. And that is something I never thought I would say about a particle physicist. But let me tell you, it's true. But seriously, if you have a great story like that and you'd like to share it, and share how you're using technology to make a big difference, there's an open invite for everyone listening to come on here. There is about a 4 to 5 week wait because we do book up in advance, but that invitation is there. And all you need to do is email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, DM me on Twitter or LinkedIn or Instagram. Just look for me at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. And if you don't want to come on and you just want to leave a comment or ask a question, my door is open to you too. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you all. I'll return again tomorrow. But a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.